Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about a structured approach to business writing. A little bit about myself. This is the part I usually forget when doing presentations. So I'm Olga. I work at Grammarly. I'm right now at experimentation platform team, and I've been Grammarly for, I think it's more than 4 years now. So I'm a software engineer. I'm not a writer. This is a skill that I learned, and this is also good news for everyone that this is a skill that you can pick up. So today we're going to talk about a structured approach to business writing. And my presentation today is going to be based on this awesome book, which is written by Harvard Business Review, Guide to Better Business Writing. I attached a link and I'm going to share the link after the presentation so that you can all get the book and read it yourself. It's amazing. It has way more examples and is going to make way more sense in my presentation because it's structured according to its own rules it's propagating to the people. Okay, so let's see what we have for today. So have you ever felt reluctant to do something? Like there's a big task that you have to tackle and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I'm not going to do this. It's impossible. So usually this feeling, I'm guessing, is coming from a lack of proper tooling to tackle a big task at hand. And there's a great saying, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad gear. So in this presentation, I'm going to share ideas which help me to move past the writer's block when writing something, be it a small memo or be it a very big document, like say a design document or something like that. And hopefully the ideas that I'm going to describe here will be helpful to you too, and any weather will become good writing weather for you. So where will we begin? Usually the main difficulty is probably figuring out how to begin, and there are two things to remember that you need to clarify before you start writing. And those two things are know why you're writing and understand your readers. So this might sound like a little vague right now. We'll go into details of each of those, and let's look at small example first. So let's imagine a situation. You're working on a project and the deadline is coming up. While reviewing the documents or designs one last time, you notice a critical error which needs to be corrected as soon as possible. This error might potentially delay the launch of the project otherwise. Let's say you decide to write an email. Let's look at the scenarios. Scenario number one, you have a trustworthy relationship with your colleague who works with you on this project and can take care of this error. You know that they're responsible, they understand the priority, and they're aware of the upcoming deadline. So what kind of an email would you write? It's going to be likely an email with friendly and informative tone in it. And the purpose of the email would be to point out the error to your friend. So that's one kind of email. Let's imagine scenario number two. It is unclear who is the owner of that part of the document. You're not sure if the error will be corrected in time. You would likely see a project manager or someone who is responsible for the delivery of the project. And in this case, the tone of your email would be more formal and conveying urgency. And the purpose of the email would be to escalate the issue, communicate the delay, propose maybe a change of plans. So as you can see, those two emails would look quite different as you're trying to accomplish different things writing those emails. So make sure you focus on the reaction that you're trying to elicit from the reader, because in the end, you want to get the results by writing something. So now let's get back to those two key things which you need to figure out before you start writing. The first thing is know why you're writing. Basically, let your purpose and your audience guide what you say and how you say it. The second important thing is plainly state the issue you're addressing and what you hope to achieve. And the third thing is, it doesn't really matter how stressful the situation is and how much is at stake. Make sure you keep your goal in mind. You need to get the results from your writing, and don't undermine your efforts with an inappropriate tone. So that's something, we'll get to that a bit later in the presentation, but that's something to keep in mind. Now, the second key thing to understand before you start writing was understand your readers. So what does it mean? First, your readers are busy. They're actually very busy, and you have to get to your point quickly and clearly. Remember that your readers might have many other projects going on, and the reality is if you don't convey your point quickly, your readers will ignore the writing, as you might ignore long rambling messages yourself when you're busy and you need to get to the point quickly. And at the slightest need to struggle to understand, they will likely stop trying. I know that this is not the best news, but this is how humans' mind works. Second, tailor your messages to your audience. Your content and level of detail will change depending on who your readers are. Third, emphasize the items most important to your readers. Make sure you highlight the things they care about most. Basically, what's in it for them, what they're trying to get from your writing. And the last thing is focus on the smart non-specialist who is actually in your audience. Your readers might have a little or no prior knowledge about the facts or analytics you're trying to convey, but assume they are intelligent people. This will help you strike the balance between the level of complexity and accessibility of your message. Okay, so now let's say you figured out everything that you need to know before you start writing and you have all your ducks in a row and you're ready to get to the actual piece of writing. So how would you approach that? Don't try to picture the completed piece just yet before you've gathered and organized all your material. It's too early to think about the finished product. You will make the challenge seem overwhelming if you try to look at it all together at the same time. To make it less overwhelming, you can instead break up your writing into 4 smaller tasks, and you can imagine them belonging to 4 different characters in your brain, representing the phases the writer should go through when writing a piece. And those 4 phases are madman, architect, carpenter, and judge. So what each of them stands for. What would a madman do? Madman gathers material and generates ideas. Architect is a character that organizes information by drawing up an outline, however simple. Carpenter puts your thoughts into words, laying out sentences, paragraphs by following the architect's plan. And the last character is judge. Judge is your quality control character who is polishing the expression throughout, everything from tightening language to correcting grammar and punctuation. At some point, you might realize that you lack data. So that would mean that you need to go back and do some more hunting and gathering. Or maybe while being a carpenter, you realize that you need to restructure your points or reorganize the sections. So you will go back to architect's phase. So it's totally normal to move between those characters and jump around as long as each of them are distinctly presented during your writing process. So let's now go into the details of and like what would be the actions that are happening within each of those phases. Madman. Usually during the madman phase, you're gonna do your great deal of brainstorming. Remember that at this phase, all ideas are good ideas. There's no bad ideas. You should accept everything, gather everything, make sure you record data, facts, opinions, and distinguish facts from opinions for future because this might be useful later when working on the details of your document or memo. Also, remember to keep links to sources, as this is very useful when you can go back and read the original, or you can point someone back to like, oh yeah, this is described in greater detail here and there. And make sure to give credit where it's due. So this is all happening during the madman phase. Now the next phase is architect. Architect outlines the plan of your writing. So generate a list of topics you want to cover and create a skeleton for your document. Develop these ideas into full sentences, as this would help you form the raw idea of like what exactly are you trying to say with each of those topics. Then once you have those, you can categorize your main points into sets of 3 and arrange those sets in a logical order from the reader's viewpoint. Don't worry yet about the detailed contents of your sentences. You will make multiple runs of them at the upcoming phases, so you will clarify them later. So now comes the carpenter's phase. So the main point of this phase is to write your first draft as quickly as you can. How you can do this? First, schedule time for drafting and make sure that when this time comes, you actually sit down and write. Don't wait for inspiration. It might never come. And moreover, if you've done your Madman and Architect phases diligently, you should have enough information and you should have enough data and you should have a good structure in your head and in your document already to be successful for writing a draft. If you're struggling to think out, if you're struggling to like cover some specific idea, try to think out loud, or maybe talk to a friend or to your colleague, because usually ideas might come easier when you discuss them with someone else. And also try to begin drafting from the point that you're most comfortable addressing. Now, don't perfect your writing just yet. Leave it for the judge. It's going to come at the next phase. Why? Because if you will be writing, basically producing the information and editing your information, you would rather do two things inefficiently, and this not will be the actual simultaneous work that you will try, that you're hoping for. Why is this so? It's because our brain, and this is probably something that maybe Belen can explain later, maybe no. Our brains are wired in a way that the editorial part of a brain and the production part of a brain are actually incompatible with one another at the same time. So it's good to separate those. You'll generate a draft, and then at the next phase, you'll go and edit it. If you feel stuck at one of the points, don't worry, just move on to the next one, cover that as much as you can, and then come back. It's an iterative process, so that's totally fine. And the last phase that we have is the judge phase. So what happens during the judge phase? During the judge phase, you're going to be revising and editing your document. Interesting thing to remember here is you should allow enough time to revise and edit your document, at least as much as you spend researching and writing. This might sound weird, but that's actually 50% of the time. If you would imagine how much time it takes you to write a piece, half of it would be actually revising and writing and editing. So during this phase, you're looking at your document as a whole. Basically, did you include all of the information that you want? Does the structure make sense? Is there anything you can clarify? So for example, during the revising phase of the judge character, you can ask questions like, have I stated my points quickly and early in my opener of the document? Basically, have I get to my points as early as possible? Do I have enough supporting facts? Is the structure of my document apparent to my readers? You can add bullet points at this phase. You can maybe distill a piece of your writing into a chart to make it more appealing to your readers, etc. Or you can also check if your headings are actually matching the contents of each of your sections to make clear what the section is about and to help your readers navigate your document. So that's revising. Editing. What would happen during the editing part of the judge phase? Can I save some words here? Is my meaning unmistakable? Maybe there is a better way to phrase some of the ideas that I'm covering in the document. As for the editing part, make sure you have multiple rounds of editing, because each time it's better to focus on just one element of a writing. Let's say you're going to be checking all sections if the tone is aligned between all of those sections. And then in the next round, you would check for grammar, which Grammarly can help for. And the next round, it's going to be formatting. And basically, there are like many other things when you're editing, but make sure that every time, like every round of editing would be focused on just one thing. That'll keep you focused on that thing. And that's very helpful. So that's the four things, the four phases of actually writing out the document. So to summarize the whole presentation that I just gave as basically to start writing and be successful in writing and move past the writer's block, you have to have two things. You have to do two things before you start writing. And then third thing, have a structured approach to the actual writing piece. Two things you should do before you're writing: keep your purpose and your audience in mind to achieve results. So understand who your audience is and understand what you're trying to achieve with your writing. And the second piece before you get writing is tailor your message to an intelligent, non-specialist member of your audience to make it accessible. and keep it in mind. And then don't wait for inspiration, use structured approach and iterate, brainstorm, outline the skeleton, write first draft quickly, and then revise and edit. So as you can see, I'm not yet perfect in this skill myself. I'm still working on it to make it better. I highly recommend reading this book. Yeah, it's not a very big one. And it's literally, as I said, it's written in a way that it advertises. So that's very helpful to see how whatever they are saying, whatever they're propagating to the people is actually implemented in the book. I highly recommend reading this book. Thanks for taking time to listen, and let me know if you have any questions.